Hi, welcome back to Random Reading Pathways. Today I'm here with another tag, and this is the Booktube Community Joy and Gratitude tag. I feel like I wanted to make sure I at least got this out before Thanksgiving tomorrow. Definitely seemed like a timely moment to go ahead and take a look at this one. So yeah, this was created by Pat at Book Chat with Pat, I think, as most people on Booktube know at this point. And I was tagged to do this by Shannon over at Shannon's Shelf. So thank you to Shannon for the tag, and to Pat, of course, for creating this wonderful tag that's been spreading joy and gratitude all over Booktube in recent weeks. So yeah, just going to go through the prompts here. Number one is name an author whose books bring you joy, or discuss a specific book that made you feel joyful. A couple of these on the list are going to have a little bit of recency bias to them, just kind of talking about things that are fresh on my mind. So for me, with a book, the ultimate kind of emotion and feeling that I typically take away from a book is inherently tied to the ending. It's kind of hard for me to separate the ending of a book from how I ultimately feel about it. And so on that note, you know, to revisit a book that I talked about at length recently, I'm going to go with Watership Down by Richard Adams. And again, it's not to spoil it, but it's just really tied to the ending here. You know, it's a pretty lengthy book about a journey of this band of rabbits who are trying to make a new life for themselves. And, you know, it builds up for quite a long time. There's a lot of ups and downs. And then ultimately, without spoiling it, you know, I get a good feeling from the ending. And that's kind of the warm and fuzzy, you know, no pun intended, feeling that remains with me from having read this recently. So yeah, definitely had a lot of joy upon being able to close this one recently. Question 2, discuss something about Booktube that you find joyful. Yeah, I've only been making Booktube videos for a couple months now, but I've been watching them for, you know, quite a bit longer than that. So I guess focusing on the recent period of me, you know, joining the community, the most joyful thing has just been seeing reflections of myself in so many other booktubers and readers out there. Whether it's, you know, scanning their bookshelves behind them and trying to pick out something that I'm familiar with or that I also have in that same copy, or it's listening to their well thought out and, you know, very intriguing positions and analyses of different books that, you know, maybe mirror some of my own. Yeah, it's that constant little shared sense of a mutual kind of unspoken understanding between myself and others that are out there. Kind of the image that I thought of when thinking of this question is I kind of feel like I'm Leo DiCaprio in that meme from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where he's kind of pointing at the TV screen and saying, "Oh, look." You know, that's that moment of recognition that I feel all the time is, again, just seeing people's books, seeing their opinions play out, and having that moment of like, yeah, that reminds me of me. So kind of, you know, finding a community of like-minded people when it comes to books in that way. Question 3, discuss a book that focuses primarily on friendship. I had the most trouble with this prompt. I need to read more books about friends and friendship, apparently, especially of the human variety, I guess. But I kind of wanted to just scan my shelves that I have and see if something jumped out, and I really struggled to find one with human friendship being the main focus. But I did think of The Call of the Wild by Jack London for this. Kind of a different take on it, I guess, but I think the main thing it kind of focuses on is the old adage of, you know, man's best friend being dog, but it kind of takes a spin on it and looks at it from the perspective of, you know, the dog, and kind of questions what are the limits and boundaries of the relationship, that friendship relationship between man and dog. And, you know, is there a point where it becomes too codependent and then it's better for the dog to be on their own, and vice versa. So yeah, it was kind of an interesting look at that historical man-dog relationship and the different iterations that it can take. And I didn't know if this would really fit with this, but I did happen to open to the introduction here in this version, which is by Melvin Burgess. And right off the bat, it says, "First friend, the poet Rudyard Kipling called the dog, but I wonder just how friendly those dogs fresh from the wild really were." So again, yeah, seemed to maybe be the right choice here, just in terms of man's best friend is dog, but then again, throughout this book, you kind of see different circumstances that question how appropriate that friendship is to both sides of the equation at different times. So yeah, I definitely need to read some more human-centered friendship books is my takeaway here, but that one was kind of an interesting take on that. Next is discuss an author or specific book that made you laugh. I'm definitely due for a reread on this, but the main book I think of whenever I think of this question, or think back to a book that made me really laugh, is this one, Confederacy of Dunces by John Kennedy Toole. Just to give a little intro here for anyone who's not familiar with it. A Confederacy of Dunces is an American comic masterpiece. John Kennedy Toole's hero is one Ignatius J. Riley, huge, obese, fractious, fastidious, a latter-day Gargantua, a Don Quixote of the French Quarter. So yeah, I mean, this character, Ignatius Riley, is just endlessly entertaining, endlessly hilarious. He's wrapped up in his own head and has this kind of superiority complex that he looks at the people around him and he can't deal with them, he can't stand them, and yet he is certainly, one of the one of the lower live people of this community. Also, if he were to reflect on himself, he would see that. But yeah, he's a comic masterpiece of a character. I need to reread this sometime soon, but it's the first thing that pops in my head whenever I think of just a laugh out loud kind of book that I've read. Let's see, number 5, discuss a book where the idea of community is important. I'm going to go with another recent read here from this year, and this is Chinua Achebe, Things Fall Apart. So this follows the story of Okonkwo in a fictional African village, and looking at Okonkwo, the main character, he kind of has this really big fall from grace in this book that plays out over the course of multiple parts of the story. And I think community is really tied up in every part of that journey for him, because it starts out with him at the pinnacle and really the top of his hierarchy in his community, and he's in a very sort of stable and positive place then. But then over the course of the story, as things happen to him, which lower his stature in the community a little bit, he personally, as an individual, starts to unravel in a really serious way. And his unraveling has to do a lot with the changes taking place in his community. And I think the loss that he feels of his community and the character that made it up is changing around him, and he himself loses a grip on himself when that happens. So I think it just kind of, it's certainly not an uplifting necessarily or warm and fuzzy kind of book, but it does highlight community for one person who his stature in it, but also his love of the people in the community is really what keeps him going. And then when that changes overnight, all of a sudden, it shows the downfall that takes place for that character. So yeah, it just kind of, it brings home the idea of community as a stabilizing force for somebody that, when it unravels the person themselves too. So yeah, I really like the idea of community that was woven into this book. And then let's see, 6 is discuss a communal reading experience that you've had. I've seen some discussion from others doing this tag of communal Booktube specific reading experiences. I'm hoping and looking forward in the future as I continue on this channel to have some more examples of that. But for this one, I had to kind of look backwards, and I was struggling to come up with anything somewhat recently until I went back a little further. And then the choice became obvious that for me, the ultimate communal reading experience that I've had to this point in my life would be the releases at midnight years and years ago of the Harry Potter books. Not Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, per se, because this was, released as the first book along with the other two to start out the series. But then thereafter, the fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh book in the series all had that classic midnight release. And yeah, since that time, I've never been able to really recapture the same kind of communal reading feeling of, I definitely, for all the rest of the books in the series, I went to Borders while it was still open at the time with a couple of friends who were also into the series like I was. And yeah, we were up later than we usually were, and we were all there for the same purpose, which was to get our hands on the latest Harry Potter book. And yeah, those memories will really stick with me going forward. I'm not sure that type of experience is really available so much anymore, but yeah, there was nothing really better than the midnight Harry Potter releases, where my friends and I would go. We would scoop up the latest book as soon as we could, and we'd start reading it as soon as we could. And the next day at school, we would compare notes as to how far we got the night before in the newest book. So yeah, I always will look fondly back on the midnight Harry Potter releases and the communal friendship, type feeling that went with finally getting our hands on these books. And name a book, number 7, name a book in which a character demonstrates real gratitude, or name a book that left you feeling a sense of gratitude. Yeah, so I think I kind of worked backwards with this one a little bit. Honestly, a movie jumped into my head right off the bat with this one, which was, kind of timely with the holiday season coming up, and It's a Wonderful Life. But that kind of got the gears going backwards to, okay, yeah, so It's a Wonderful Life is based on the short story or the novella, The Greatest Gift. And in turn, looking at The Greatest Gift, taking that back further, that's kind of based on Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. So with that kind of reverse engineering of this question, I will highlight Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. And I think when you look at Ebenezer Scrooge, probably in my mind, no greater character that I can think of, at least that I've come across, that has introduced to him a greater sense of gratitude. Starting off as somebody who is that kind of old miser, he wants nothing to do with anybody else and feels that everybody else is below him, and he is sort of a well-off person in the society, and he's perfectly okay with that and thinks that he is entitled to that. But then when Dickens in the book employs one of the greater, most incredible plot devices that I've ever come across to bring about a feeling of gratitude, which is to remove Scrooge from his surroundings and remove him from his time that he's existing in, and show him, flashbacks to his childhood, when he was a little bit more of a happy and a little bit more of a grateful person, and then show him the present, but from the perspective of others talking about him in a very negative way, since he is an ungrateful person. And then, of course, the most haunting part of the book, of course, would be the future, when Scrooge is shown his ultimate death, and the fact that when that takes place, everybody's kind of A-okay with it. They're not going to miss him at all. So when he goes full circle to realize that, he ultimately he begs to be able to go back to his life, and he will show more gratitude, and all of a sudden Scrooge wakes up the next day a different person. And I think that's captured in It's a Wonderful Life incredibly. If I ever have moments in my own life when I let a little bit of an ungrateful feeling slip in here and there, or things like that, I try to really just remember It's a Wonderful Life and A Christmas Carol, in the sense that it's the old adage of, you don't know what you have until it's gone. I think those two works capture that, and it all started with Dickens, with A Christmas Carol. So I would look at that one. And then, yeah, finally the end is to just tag others and try to continue spreading the joy and gratitude of Booktube. I think a lot of people have done this tag to this point, but if I can find any channels that I follow that haven't done it, then I'll see if I can tag them to keep this message spreading. So thanks again to Shannon for the tag, and thanks most of all to Pat at Book Chat with Pat for creating this really inspiring Booktube tag. So that's it for today. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody, and I'll be back with some more updates soon.